So today we're starting our unit on trigonometry, and trigonometry is all to do with triangles, obviously, and we're going to be using our calculator heavily again, and this is we'll look at this a bit later when we look at the calculator, but this is really important that we have our calculator in degree mode. So it will, if it's not in degree mode, it will cause different answers, and it often causes it to be a little bit more difficult because it's not thinking, because when you put it in radians, it's changing the concept of it or the actual sizing. So we'll need to make sure, and we'll look at that in a little bit. So anyway, the first part of trigonometry is we're going to be looking at a right angle triangle. So a right angle triangle is when we have one angle with the 90 degrees. So they indicate that with a square most often. Now we need to learn to label the triangle. So if we remember back to, we've done this before, but the side opposite the 90 degrees is the hypotenuse. So we might say, so the hypotenuse is opposite the 90 degrees, and it is also, if you take note, it is the longest side of the triangle, the longest side of the right angle triangle, we should say, okay? And the other thing we might write about the hypotenuse is that it's sometimes referred to, it's sometimes labelled as C in some of our formulas, isn't it? So sometimes labelled the letter C. So if you remember back to Pythagoras, they put the letter C. So you might just write that. Okay, then when we're talking about, say, the angle down here. So we're just going to write about the angle. So this symbol here is just the symbol they use to represent an angle. And like I might say an unknown angle. So if they haven't written what it is, but they just put that little symbol that it's an angle. Sometimes they might use X as well. So sometimes we might see this and they might put X, but often that's the symbol for angle, so that's why it's used a lot. So it's just that circle with the line going through it, just so you're aware. Okay, so then it becomes important on where we look at where that angle is, or when we're referring to that. So when we go to the side opposite the angle that they're giving us, that's known as the opposite. So we go, and we'll sometimes call that O, just when we're labelling it. And then we've got the adjacent side is the one next to the angle. Okay, so adjacent means next to, or next, like next door, adjacent. So that's that one. So we need to label your triangle because it's going to be crucial, because it helps you determine which formula we're going to be using. So we might call the adjacent the A, and we put a circle around it. I like to put the hypotenuse, I like to use H, just so I know it's the hypotenuse. Okay, so we're now going to look at trigonometric ratios, which just means formulas. And the reason they might use the word ratio is just because they're sometimes the formulas have fractions in them. So we like to call it a ratio. So don't even stress about it. If they say trigonometric ratios, they just mean these formulas we're about to do. Now, you've done them in previous. All right, so with these trigonometric ratios, so they're the formulas, and we've done them before, and you might have learnt in the lower years, we had that little saying called Sokotoa to help us to remember them. Now, the reason like it's handy to remember them is because that, yeah, we do get our reference book, but if you are flicking and looking up a lot, it slows you down. So if you can start to learn things and you know them and you can go about it straight away, that's what makes someone quicker. So the first one, if you look at this SOHCAHTOA, we're going to look at is the sine rule. So the sine rule, and that's why the S is first. So we can look at the sine rule when we have our angle here. So the sine rule is when we have the opposite side and the hypotenuse. And so what we like to do at the sine rule is the sine angle. So if sine's a function, like a button on the calculator, if you press sine and say it was 30 degrees, so you press sine 30, it would equal the same as what the opposite side is over the hypotenuse. So say, for example, I had a triangle like this, and I had 2 and I had 1. I could say sine angle equals, oh sorry, I might even put, put the 1 over there. So yeah, we'll put 1. Sine would be 1 over 2, okay? So that, sorry, I wrote the adjacent there. So that's the sine rule. If we look at the cosine rule, so cosine rule is when we have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. And you can see in car, that's why they write the A first, is because the A will go on top of the fraction. So cosine angle equals A over H. So maybe in a test you might just pop in the SOHCAHTOA on the top of your page, so you make sure you can quickly do them. So tan is actually where we use the adjacent and the opposite. So because it says TOA up there, that means the O is on top. So we'd have O over A. Okay, so they're our formulas. Now, we need to make a real big important note. These formulas are only for right angled triangles. So these formulas are only for right angled triangles. So you need to know that it's a right angled triangle. So if they either tell you that it is, or they'll indicate with that square in the corner that that's 90, okay? And just some other things too. How many degrees are there totally in a triangle? Do anyone remember? How many does 180? Yeah, so all the angles in a triangle, so you might write that, all angles in a triangle add up to 180. So say they gave you the other two and you can see that the other one would be 90, then you know it's a 90 degrees triangle, and you could use all of these three formulas, the SOHCAHTOA. All right, so if we look at, now we're going to look at our calculator. And I said before that it's crucial that you have your calculator in degree mode. So if you go and turn on a normal calc page, if you see, you need to see that degrees is written up there. Now, if it's not, let's write how to get to get the calculator in degree mode. If it's not, you go to, I'm just going to pause the video and do it with you. If you are needing to change it, we went to home and we went to number 5 settings, and then we went to number 2 document settings, and we then changed it change the angle from rad to degree. Okay. Okay, so we've gone in and found the trig function. So here's the trig button here, and we selected sine, and we put 49, and here is our number. That's what sine 49 is equal to. So if we pop that, it says up here to 4 decimal places. So this one would be 0.754. Now, when you do 4 decimal places, you have to look at the fifth one. If the fifth one is 5 or above, you would round up, but it's not. So it's 47. What about this cos 16? It'll be 0.9613. Good. And the last one, tan, will be 0.5161. Okay? Because the fifth number was not above 5, and then in this one, the fifth number was actually 6. That's why this one went up to 3. All right, you're going to do